restricted, and when she'd reach for the darker colors at the far end of her paint palette, her headphones would come unplugged. She would escape for those colors. She would escape the tether of her headphones, even escape music for those colors, whereas I would have escaped colors for music. She'd swirl flesh gobs of deepest cobalt blue oil paint into solar yellow. The isolated beauty of each slowly became a rich rainforest green. At times, the purple hippie fringe along her sleeve would drag through the paints accidentally, so unperturbed by the fact of indelibly stained clothing, she deliberately dragged the leather tassels across her canvas, striping it with all the colors. Jane's soundtrack was a constant of mine. As soon as a record ended, she would select another. With her headphones on, I could never tell what song she had selected until she sang a line or two. I would watch her small, cupped hand hovering under the brush from her makeshift cinder block palette that displayed cadmium red, vermilion, lead white in the rainbow spectrum of heavy metals, beside ball jars of linseed oil and turpentine and other solvents. Jane's voice rang out, the sounds of silence, and I always wondered why they hadn't recorded her mellifluous off-key version. It was my favorite song. Her brush traveled the short distance to the right lower corner of a finished canvas where she signed it. Jane. Her left palm held the globule of green, while her brush just kept dipping into her makeshift cup before finally traveling back up to the canvas to add the word to. Jane, too. I looked at my own palm and wondered if the green paint Jane held in her hand would remain in the crevices of her palm to mark Jane's lifeline and heartline, and how that hand would feel in mine. Jane was my dream. She defied logic, but it was the faulty logic that came from underestimating my abilities. I now know that real dreams require unreasonable actions, like my granddaddy always said, and that is why I despise my reasonableness with gusto. My mom yelled, "Supper!" So I slipped away from the bushes shrouding Jane's garage, back around the block, up Sandpiper to Bentliff and inside my house. To exist in Jane's presence was all I wished for. I hadn't a clue what I could ever conjure to say to such a unicorn. I walked inside my house for dinner and straight into a fog of the sickening perfume that my sister Lilith had coated herself with, and my mom's cloud of cigarette smoke at the huge chopping block with little drawers that contained postage stamps and paper. Most nights, right before bedtime, Dad would time me with my silver stopwatch racing my bike around the block. I'd relinquish its leather thong from around my neck, and I'd set off on my Schwinn Stingray. Often, when I was out at the second corner of the block, I'd see Lilith smoking with Magda on the far corner. Next morning, before school, same thing. Dad timing my laps and Lilith out smoking. My red scarf, just like Speed Racer's, never left my neck, and my dad had put an M on the front of one of his old racing helmets with red electrical tape. My Stingray was my Mach 5, and I wanted to break a record every single day. My dad would cheer me on like I was in a tight battle for the lead on the last lap of the Monaco Grand Prix. He would yell to me about braking for the corners and proper apexing to shave tents. And he always said that the biggest gains were hidden in the most overlooked areas. He always said that my goal was to improve, whatever the size of the improvement, and above all, to never quit, because that's not what winners do. I'd scream by in cutoffs and bare feet, the hot wind pulling at my hair, hoping to shave a tenth, or even a couple hundredths of a second. The speed of my progress was less important than the progress itself, so I had to make sure it was always there. There was no rush, even with Jane. I only had to get a little bit closer to her every day. I just couldn't quit. And every day, I hoped Jane would see me as I was screaming by on my Stingray. I heard my father's words, but I was far too literal as a child. Maybe it was the things I stuck to that kept Jane at a distance. I wish I had understood at a much earlier age all the wonderful things that my granddaddy told me. It all seeped down from my granddaddy. And my granddaddy contradicted just about every sentence from any parenting handbook ever written. He was the only person in my life to ever contest all those lies. He'd say,